this is a little different. I actually love talking to people in person because I love the energy and I love a back and forth flow. So this will be a little bit new for this kind of teaching. I want to thank Esther and the Human Relations Commission. I personally am so glad to live in a city that values having a conversation about listening during this time, and just really appreciating that, and really appreciating that all of you are taking time out of your day because you value this as well. So that feels inspiring to me. I want to invite you as we're going through, like I said, I usually love to have a back and forth. I want to invite you to put things on the chat stream. And if you have questions, Esther can field those, or I can make a note of them and get back to them later. It's my hope going into this that that you're going to get something meaningful for yourselves, and that what I have to share is going to be of use to you. So maybe, you know, it might help if maybe one or two of you is willing to just throw something up into the group chat, or raise your hand and Esther can pick you, just maybe to say a word or two about why you want, why are you here tonight for this? What is on your heart around listening? Anyone? Okay. I like that, Esther. I can relate to that as well. She said, I want to be a better listener. I talk too much. So
I too feel like we need more dialogue because we are so divided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So given that that's the case, you know, I want to really dial this back in what I am going to be presenting on. Oh, let's see. Here's a couple more questions.
I don't mind disagreement, but how we disagree needs our attention. Another comment is ditto. Easy to offer fixes without listening for what is really needed. Tom Eggleston, I work in a church and I know not only want to be a better listener, but I also want to show others that I am listening. I love that.
Great. Great. Wonderful. So one of the most fundamental building blocks in being a good listener is dialing it way back to what are we putting our attention on? Because oftentimes we don't even notice what we're paying attention to. We just find ourselves reacting. I went for a walk with a friend this weekend and my mind was all over the place. I was listening to her and thinking about my own things that I wanted to share, and we had some humor, you know, it was everywhere. And that's great for going for a walk with a friend. But when things become more serious, or someone is upset, or we're talking about something controversial, we want to be able to have a different tone and spirit to what we're doing. So I want to do a little exercise. If you feel comfortable right now, we're going to just get relaxed in your chair. And if you would like to close your eyes, go ahead and do that. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. We're just going to do a little practice of using the spotlight of our attention. So our attention is like a spotlight. It just flings back and forth all over the place until we grab hold of it and decide what we want to shine it on. So for the next few minutes, we're just going to make some choices about what we're shining that spotlight on. And the first place that I want your spotlight to shine is just notice the sounds that are going on in the room that you're in. And now shift that spotlight of your attention to the thoughts that are going through your mind. without grabbing hold of any one of them, just noticing there are thoughts rolling through all the time. And now we're going to shift the spotlight of our attention to our physical selves. So just noticing, starting with the top of your head, your eyes. Notice your tongue in your mouth. Notice your neck and your shoulders. Just notice your arms hanging from your shoulders and the weight of your hands wherever they are. Notice your chest and your belly. Bring that spotlight of your attention to your bottom in the chair that you're sitting in. Let's shine that spotlight of attention on your feet as they're connected to the floor. And now we're going to move that spotlight of attention from our physical selves to our breathing. And just notice how that air comes in through your nose and mouth, down through your throat, into your lungs. And then how it moves back out from your lungs, through your throat, through your mouth and nose. Just notice the cycle of your breathing. How the inhale and the exhale connect with each other. And now I want you to shift the spotlight of your attention to your heart. I want you to think of a time when you have felt really listened to, when you have felt really understood. And just notice what that is like. I want you to notice what's happening in your body. Notice what's happening with your breathing. When you really have that sense of feeling deeply understood. And when you're ready, kind of hanging on to that experience, coming back to the group, opening up your eyes, and if you, maybe a couple of people, if you would be willing to unmute yourself and just maybe say a word, what did you notice in yourself, either with the spotlight of your attention or when you remembered a moment where you felt deeply understood? Anybody bravely willing to speak out? Just a word.
You feel really comfortable when you feel understood.
Yeah.
You're at ease, and there's little or no dis-ease.
Mm-hmm. So kind of a sense of, is it relaxation?
Yeah, and stillness, right?
Stillness. Okay.
In this moment, particularly, when you're paying attention to the breath and your heartbeat,
Okay.
and you relax into that, and then you slow down, and your mind is still and not in that frantic loop.
Yeah. So a difference between a frantic loop and a sense of slowing down and a sense of ease. Yeah. Anybody else? Thank you, Catherine.
I thought relaxed.
Yeah. So relaxed. Yeah, that's great. You know, just in terms of human health and well-being, we know that it's good to be in a state where we're feeling relaxed, right? That's a nice thing. Our blood pressure lowers, our digestive system can do its job, our muscles feel more relaxed. It's a good state to be in. We can't maintain that all the time, but it is something that we can get to. And that's what I'm going to call home base for listening. When we're in that more receptive stance, and it's a physical place, there's slowness, there's a different kind of breathing. When we bring our attention to it, that is a place out of which we can be our best self. And I think it's really important. I have to remind myself what is home base again, because sometimes conversations get going or I read things in the news that really bring something else forward. But I want to just share this. This is my fancy handout that I wrote. This comes from the work of a man named Richard Schwartz, who does something called internal family systems. But he said, in all of us, in the core of who we are, every person, I don't care who it is, I don't care how they vote, I don't care what their belief system is, in the core of every human being are these qualities. He calls them the 8 C's. And I want you to think about when you imagine that spot where you felt deeply understood. We have natural curiosity, natural compassion, natural courage, willingness to connect or a sense of connection with other people, with ourselves, and with the world around us. We have clarity, a sense of calm, a sense of confidence, and it's also a place of creativity. It's a place where new ideas can take root. It's where we have fertile soil for new ideas and for new ways to engage. So that's a really important thing that we know about ourselves, that we all have that in us. It doesn't matter what's going on. We always have that home base inside. Sometimes we have a harder time connecting with it. But that home base is always there. So for me, that's really valuable information. When I want to think about listening, now I know where I need to get to. And one of the ways, well, there are basically 3 ways that we can get there: through our thinking, through our heart, our emotions, or through our physical selves. And again, we can use that spotlight of our attention to make a decision about that. So let's talk about what is it that gets in the way? If these 8 C's are kind of the core of who we are, and we have this wonderful intention that we want to listen, what happens to us that we're not doing it? So maybe a couple people who might be willing to say, what do you notice in yourself when you're having a hard time listening? What kinds of things are going on? And if you want to put something up in the chat instead of speaking up. Okay, Becca, I see defensiveness. Yeah, we're trying to protect something. Painful memory. Thanks, Lena.
Distractions.
Yeah, distractions. Okay.
I worry about what to say, Tom Eggleston.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, so we're caught up in our mind about what should I do? What am I supposed to say here? Yeah. Yeah, great. So I want to share something with you. I'm reaching back here to my shelf to grab my brain. So this brain is really important. You know, we have learned so much about our brains over the last 15 years, especially, and it seems like every day we're learning more and more. And the kind of listening that we're talking about, it's really important to have an understanding of what's happening when we're not able to do it well through our actual, it's like a mechanical problem in our brain. So there's 3 parts of the brain that are really important for when we are not able to listen well. So this part, the brain stem, is right where the spinal cord goes up into the brain. It's the most primitive part of our brain. It's the only part of our brain that is fully formed at birth. So it's the same things that we have in common with a lizard. Basically, it's where fight, flee, freeze comes from. The second part of our brain that's really important is the limbic system, which is right here. The limbic system and the brain stem together are this, it's called the subcortical brain, which basically means all the parts of the brain that are not in your conscious control. Now, what's interesting about that is among the things that are not in our conscious control are memory, meaning, and motivation. Those aren't, you know, we don't decide, like I did not decide consciously one day that I don't enjoy the taste of cilantro. I just don't like it. It's not a thing that I can change my mind about. I don't care. You can tell me and I've had people try to tell me how I should love it and it tastes wonderful. It doesn't to me. So that's something that is coming from a different part of my brain than rationality.
Anne, I'm so sorry, but actually that's a genetic thing. Being able to, if cilantro tastes bad to you, it is a genetic thing and there's groups. And so it's not actually a brain thing. Sorry.
Well, thank you, Catherine. So let's pick something else. Like,
yeah, I didn't want to sidetrack you, but I also did think you wanted that out there.
Lena talked about having a memory of something unpleasant that comes up. And a memory of something unpleasant comes up in the subcortical brain, right? We don't have a choice about that. Memories of unpleasant things, whether we like something, I mean, the particular DNA of flavor may come from genetics, but the response and the memories around that and my reaction to that still are things that happen in the limbic system. So subcortical brain, very important. Third part of the brain, neocortex. This is the part we all like to think is in charge. Rational brain, problem solving, planning, telling ourselves what opinions we have and educating ourselves. It's the part where we want to engage with people around ideas and what do we think about this and that. We like to think that this is mostly what's in charge for us. And the truth is this neocortex has it has much smaller percentage of control over our behavior and our responses. They are saying like maybe 20 to 30% influence rather than the level of control that we think we have. So when we find ourselves getting upset in a conversation, we often are thinking, I know for me, I'm thinking, why doesn't this person, how could someone believe that? How could this person think that terrible thing? Well, they just must be X, Y, and Z, right? Because I'm thinking, well, if they're a rational person like I am, they surely couldn't believe that. And what's happening is I'm having a limbic and a subcortical brain reaction. There are parts of me that are responding in a visceral way that may not even make sense rationally, but I'm not really a thinking person anymore as I start to get more and more upset. And I'm going to give you an example of that. When I was in graduate school, my husband Jim and I were living in Chicago, And we lived in Rogers Park, which is the farthest north little neighborhood in the city of Chicago. It was kind of near the water, and we would go out for walks in the evenings when we had a chance to. We liked walking by the beach, and it was not unlike out at Holland State Park, where you have a parking lot and then sidewalk and some parking blocks, and then the beach was out there. So we were walking along the sidewalk, and we saw a person walking a big lizard, like a Nile monitor lizard. They were walking it on a leash. Now, I grew up on the other side of the state, so I had never seen a lizard out in a city. I'd only seen them in the Detroit Zoo under a heat lamp sitting on a little log. So first of all, I was kind of stunned. And then this person was yelling at the lizard. It was crawling up on the parking block, and the person is yelling at it, "No, bad lizard." And the lizard, of course, was just doing its thing, and this person kept yelling. So Jim and I were getting a real kick out of this, because the funny thing is, first of all, a lizard only has a brainstem. So what that means is the lizard, it can't even hear. Lizards do not hear sounds. They only hear vibration. So to say something to a lizard is kind of pointless, because they're not going to hear it. Second of all, unlike a dog, right? Like dogs and cats have a limbic system, and horses. A lizard doesn't have that. A lizard can't even register, "Oh, you're angry with me. Maybe I should do something here." It's only coming out of this survival brainstem. So what that became, I mean, we laughed about that many times. And then when we had our children, and I was trying to be this nice, rational social worker, talking with my children when they were getting upset at, age 3, if one of them was exhausted and having a meltdown, and I'm trying to just be so therapeutic and kind. And my husband would say to me, "No, bad lizard," which meant I was going to have—
I don't know why I got the wrong link.
I was going to have as much success talking to my children when they were in a brainstem mode as that person who was talking to the lizard. So this is really important to know right now. It's really important, A, to understand that lots of people are getting triggered in society at this moment. This is a pandemic. We are in a pandemic. This is an ongoing, we are all living in an ongoing national, international crisis time. All of our limbic systems are heightened right now. We're in survival mode, because this is the kind of time that survival mode is created for. We all need to be more careful. So we have this really good adaptive thing happening, but also what's happening is we don't have as much bandwidth to help settle ourselves. We are easily triggered. Everyone is easily triggered, and we don't necessarily have the emotional resources that we often do to talk ourselves down from that. So one thing that I know gets in my way is I can feel my own self. And I'm going to ask you to think about yourself too. There are 3 main responses that our brainstem will give us when we're in a heightened state. I'm sure you've heard of them: fight, flee, and freeze. If you find yourself going numb, shutting down, wanting to withdraw, if you find yourself getting angry and activated, if you find yourself wanting to bolt, those are all brainstem protective actions. And this just happens. These are not things that we decide to do. They're things that just happen. And so if we're going to be helping ourselves to improve our listening, we need to make sure we know the cues from our own body about when we are getting into bad lizard mode ourselves, right? At what point, when I'm checking in with myself, am I no longer able to listen? I know for me, I can feel tension in my chest. I can feel my stomach tightening. It's very physical. Or I'll get a swimming feeling in my head. Those are all cues to me. This is not a good time for me to be listening. I probably need someone to listen to me. The louder I get, the faster my pace, the more I need to be listened to rather than trying to listen to someone else. Or I need to be able to tell myself that I need to walk away from the conversation for a minute. Or I need to say, you know what? I really want to listen to you. I'm really struggling though. Or can we pick this up in 10 minutes? I need to go to the bathroom. And then I want to help myself physically to reconnect again. So important to know, what are the symptoms for you? What does it look like in your body when you are not able to listen, when you don't have the bandwidth to do it? There are conditions that make it hard to listen. If I haven't eaten, if it's the end of the day, if I'm really tired, do not enter into difficult conversations. Another thing, if I don't feel like I have a choice, it's really important to always feel like it is a choice about whether you are going to be working on listening or not. So those are some of the basic pieces about what can get in our way, and how to understand that so that we have a better opportunity to listen. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions so far. You can either speak out or go ahead and put it on the chat.
I have some comments. Someone said, me too, my chest tightens, my jaw sets strongly, and my eyes begin to hurt. I think it's when they're not listening. Someone says, will a 10-minute break help? Is it like a reset? What are your reentry to a listening body tips?
Yeah, so let's, maybe I'll just say a word about Vicki Lynn's question and Rebecca's. Just taking a break isn't necessarily going to help you reconnect. I know for me, I can be triggered about something and I can take a break and I can escalate even further. And so just taking that time away is not necessarily going to help. What I want to do during that time is to check with myself. I want to check my breathing. For me, checking my breathing or using that spotlight of my attention to feel my feet on the ground, to ask myself, do I have the capacity right now to come back to this conversation? Now, of course, we're talking about more triggering, more activating kind of things right now. I think that's what's on lots of people's minds. But sometimes in conversation, I'm not getting activated and I still am not listening very well because my mind is wandering. And so what I want to do once I get myself regrounded again is let's go back to that spotlight of attention. And I have one of my fine artistic drawings here. I don't know if everyone can see this. It's 2 stick figures. That's the extent of my art abilities. And what we often find ourselves doing is listening neocortex to neocortex, right? So I'm listening to the words you say. When I'm doing this kind of listening, I call that listening for information. And I know for me, what I often am defaulting to if I'm not paying attention, I'm thinking about, do I agree with this person? Do I like what they're saying? I'm gonna wait until they take a breath so that I can throw my 2 cents in. Or we have all kinds of things that go through our minds, correcting people. saying, oh yeah, I have that same exact experience, bringing it back to myself in some kind of way. That's just normal, you know, again, that spotlight of attention just going all over the place. So that's one way to do it. What I find a lot more rewarding is when I am connecting with people at a level around meaning. So instead of listening to their thoughts, remember we talked about the limbic system is a place where meaning and motivation are. So I want to be able to find a way to get past the thoughts that someone's having, because I can actually have a really connected, enjoyable conversation with someone that we have widely different views on things. Because what I want to hear is not what do they think, but what does this mean to you? And I'm going to give you an example of that I've heard pretty recently, which I think is a really beautiful and inspiring story. There's a woman she's a rapper and a performance artist and an activist, and her name is Genesis B. And she, in New York City, was doing a performance, and she grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi. And during the performance, she wrapped herself in the Confederate flag, and she put a noose around her neck. And she got a lot of pushback from social media, as you can imagine. There were just Twitter and all the places that she was connected with really were blasting her for what she did. And so she was brave enough to read some of the feedback that she was getting from people. And one of the people who gave her some feedback was a young man who she had been to elementary school with in Biloxi. And he said, I don't agree with what you've done with my Confederate flag. And, you know, they could have completely, at that point, it could have come to neocortical blows about ideology and why they thought the other person was wrong. And what happened instead was she asked if he might have her come over to his backyard, because during COVID time, in Mississippi. And he said he would. And so they sat down together, and she said to him, tell me, how do you feel when you look at that Confederate flag? And he said, I feel at home. And she continued to ask him questions. And this went on for quite a long time. And at another point, he asked her, what do you feel when you see that Confederate flag? And she shared with him. And they came to the end of that conversation. And he said, I still don't agree with you. But this is the first time someone has asked me why that flag's important to me. And I respect that. And a few months later, I believe they continued their conversation. And a few months later, he removed that flag. And he said, I'm taking this down, not because I don't have love for this flag, but because I can see what it means to you. I know what it means to me, and now I can understand better what it means to you. And out of respect for you, I'm going to take it down. Now, I think that's a remarkable story, and I think that is a really great example of what happens when we're willing to engage with each other at a level of meaning, not debating ideas, but at a level of help me understand, what is it that's important to you about this that you would feel so strongly? Now, it takes stamina. I said that listening is a power workout. It takes a lot of stamina to be able to continue. I'm imagining for Genesis B she had to keep coming back as she heard this person that she knew growing up talk. She had to keep coming back and regrounding herself so that she could stay present enough to stay with her curiosity, right? With these parts of who she is. Courage. She continued to have courage. She continued to move toward. She continued to ask. She was wanting to move into connection. So breathing, regrounding, reminding yourself, what is my purpose here? Am I just trying to debate? Am I trying to understand so that I can attack? So that I can tell people they're wrong, so that I can judge, so that I can justify myself? Or am I trying to connect with these better qualities inside of this person, with that common humanity of our capital S self? And for me, when I am working to have that focus, I actually find it to be very energizing. And as I'm trying to listen to the meaning for another person, I find it helps me settle down. So sometimes if I am part of a conversation where things are escalating, I might say, just a minute, I want to make sure that I'm understanding what's important to you. And that helps me reconnect. It helps me to shift that spotlight of my attention, instead of on wanting to be right, to reminding myself this is about connecting with another person. So, you know, there are a lot of really wonderful books and resources out there, and I am just kind of glossing over the shoulders of giants that I have learned from. Marshall Rosenberg has a wonderful book called Nonviolent Communication, where he talks about this, how to listen for meaning. Also, Resma Menakem has a great book called My Grandmother's Hands, where he talks a lot about the subcortical brain and the physicality that's involved in listening and in managing our own getting triggered. There's another great book called Say What You Mean, which is another person who kind of takes off from Marshall Rosenberg's book and talks more about the physiology involved in listening. So those are more resources if you're interested. But I would really like to hear, I would maybe open it up for questions right now.
I have a question. I put it in the chat. I said, are the C's, you know, your list of the C's, are they present when we're listening, when we're listened to, or both?
You know what, that I love that, because the best thing is that it's both. And when we listen, when we decide to put the spotlight of our attention on another person, on what's important to another person, it is a huge gift to them. It helps them reground, and it also can help us reground. So can
you read them one more time?
What's that?
Can you read them one more time?
Yes, I can. Curiosity, compassion, courage, connection, clarity, calm, confidence, and creativity. Those are qualities that we experience when we are feeling grounded and when we're really trying to listen well to people. Mm-hmm.
I will send those 8 C's and also some of the references that you, book references that you made in to the team tomorrow. So I might be reaching out to you for titles. I got the names of the authors, but I didn't get all the titles.
Okay.
And
Esther, there's some more in the chat. Rebecca, Lynn and Rebecca. And
okay. So let me get back in here. Rebecca. Rebecca had a question, and I don't know if we answered this already. I thought that's where I ended, but what are your re-entry to a listening body? Are there any re-entry suggestions to have listening body?
Yeah, I think that's where things like breathing, something that is very physical, you know, wall push-ups are a huge helper. Jumping up and down can help. Bringing your attention, just even bringing your attention to your body sometimes can be enough.
Lynn Raymond shared with everyone, seeing the other as a human being worth listening to and caring about. It's so hard to move away from wanting to be right.
Yes, yes. I think we can all agree on that. I love to be right. I love to be right, but the problem with being right in these kind of situations, when it's about a connection with people, is I'm shooting myself in the foot for the long game, which is my well-being in the community in which I live is about the quality of relationship that I have with the people around me, even people I differ from. And so I have to be willing to set aside that short-term dopamine hit that happens with being right in order to serve this long game of deeper connection and an overall sense of well-being.
My husband always says, it's okay to win the battle, but at the end you lose the war, like in family life.
Yeah.
Rebecca Shipper says, she put a comment in, requires us to assume positive intent, doesn't it? What pre-work in that regard do you do to get yourself there? What kind of pre-work can we do as listeners?
Yeah, I love that statement about intent and intention. I do something called restorative circles, which can be really intensive conflict transformation meetings. And I have to do a lot of work with myself. I have to make sure that I've eaten well, I've slept well. I have to make sure that I have friends that I've gotten support from before I go into that conversation. I need to make sure that I continue to remind myself of my role and my intention so that I'm really clear. And I have to remind myself, you know, there are other places in life where I can be right, but this is not one of them. Trying to be right in this situation is not a help. So, yeah, and I want to go back to the comment about having to assume good intentions on the part of other people, even if people seem to not have good intentions. You know, what's been helpful for me, a couple of things. One is reminding myself about brain function and that we are in a pandemic and everyone has a short fuse. Everyone has a short fuse and is not their best self. All of us, the whole world right now. The other thing, there are two shows that I watched recently, which I want to mention. One was on PBS and it's called Hijacking Your Mind. And another is a show on Netflix called Social Dilemma. And both of those shows interview people who are involved in social media in one way or another, or in the various technologies we use, Google and so forth, and the way that media is currently distributed. And what they talk about is the people who are in these organizations that run Facebook, they have gone to Stanford to take classes about technology and the brain to figure out how they can get your attention to stay for a few more seconds on whatever it is that you're paying attention to on your screen. And there's no ethics behind it. There's no to what end. And that's what the people they were interviewing were saying, you know, we're realizing we set this whole thing up and nobody did it with an ill intention, but the consequences are terrible now. We're living with those consequences. So, you know, something that really grabs hold of our attention is fear. Fear and outrageous statements about people that you may already have judgments about, right? Everybody gets sucked into that. We all get sucked into gossip, and we get sucked into something that, whoa, it's just the way, it's not because we're bad people. It's just the way that this whole thing is set up. Our survival mechanisms, our attention gets drawn into the negative and the fearful. And before we know it, we're down a rabbit hole. So this little exercise we did in the beginning tonight about taking my attention back. It's such an important act right now to take our own attention back and to be aware of what we're putting it on, and to be able to help our own central nervous systems to be calm, and then to choose to bring that in to an experience of listening to other people. If you don't know what to do in this world right now, I'm telling you, that is huge. It is absolutely huge to lend your attention to another human being. So I turned that question into a mini sermon. So
I like that.
I do, you know, I want to kind of go back because I have heard among people in my family and people that are friends of mine and people who I see in my work, everybody is feeling like, oh, I feel so helpless. There's, you know, what can I do? There's nothing I can do right now. And I'm telling you, bringing your full attention to another human being is major. It's major. And I have learned something. Jim and I have 2 beehives that we got this last spring. So we're new beekeepers. And I have learned something really important from bees that I'm going to share. So what I've learned from bees is, A, they're amazing. They can make, you know, just one hive makes over 100 pounds of honey, just these tiny little insects in my backyard flying all around. That's incredible. Also, they're a self-organizing, very complex system. And the thing about bees is they each have a role, and each of the bees, they don't talk to each other, but somehow they know what their role is. There's the queen and the drones, and then there's the worker bees, and there's mortician bees that remove the dead bodies of the bees who die, and there's the bees that nurture the young, and there's the bees that are, they all work to keep the temperature inside the hive always at 95 degrees, no matter how cold or hot it is outside. Each one of those bees is just doing their thing. We sit outside the hives and like watch these bees fly in and out. And they each are doing their own thing with purpose. They're not saying, oh, why can't I be the queen? Or the queen's the one who's really doing the stuff around here. I'm just doing nothing. No, they are all so busy doing their job, doing the work that's in front of them. And somehow, with each of them doing that job, this whole amazing thing of the creation of honey happens. And what that has reminded me of is, you know what? I'm here. This is my job. The people that I run into every day, the people who are in my sphere, this is where my attention needs to be. It doesn't need to be grander or more glorious than that. And that is enough. When I do that well, I have to trust that that expands out in the wider world. So. Yeah, Esther, where are we with time? And
we are at 7:56, and this was so powerful. Does everyone know how to use the reactions at the bottom? Can we give Anne a clap? or a thumbs up, or I love using technology when it works for me. So Anne, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been just so, it was really needed. And I'm so thankful for the Human Relations Commission for having the vision to say, we need to do this. And we really didn't have this planned until first quarter of 2021. But I am so thankful that members of the commission said, we need to do this before the election. We probably should have put this way ahead this summer. But I think that we need to continue this conversation at home, in our churches, at work. But I think we as a community, we need to plan more events like this. It's beneficial to us all. It's helpful. I feel like what you just shared with us, I'm going to take home and use at home.
Great.
And speaking with my supervisor, and speaking with my community, and speaking with my commission, and with all my brothers and sisters in the community.
Right. You know, here's something that I would love. I would just love if people want to do it in the chat, just so, because I'm just putting all this out there and it's not really a conversation. I would love to know something you're going to take with you out of this time today. Something that's new, something that is going to stick with you. That just really helps me to feel more connected.
I love it.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. Thank you so much, everyone. That really is helpful to me. So.
And thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Esther. And I know you have two great speakers lined up for the next couple Mondays too. So, or maybe it's Thursday and Monday.
So we have another speaker on Thursday. The Art of Listening, the second in a 3-part series, will be Professor Kyle Small. He's the professor of church leadership, and he's the director of research and learning for churches and missions. So I invite everyone to attend. It'll be this Thursday, October 22nd, from 7 p.m. until 8 p.m. I will send everyone the link right before the event. And I apologize for those who did not get my link right before this event. Unfortunately, I had 3 different meetings scheduled at the same time. And for whatever reason, my Zoom didn't like that. I had other people leading the other ones. I guess I can't be at 3 places in one time. Got to just do one thing at a time. That's part of my mission for listening in the future and giving everyone my full attention. All right. So thank you, everyone. On behalf of the Human Relations Commission, will our Human Relations commissioners say a small word to the guests? Kiefer, Dr. Vicki Lynn, Catherine, Rebecca.
See, after this, it's like, no, I'm not speaking, I'm listening.
Yes.
Thank you guys for coming.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you'll be able to join us Thursday night and next Monday as well.
And thank you to the other commissioners who set this up. This was very good.
Hi, I'm ending the meeting for all so that you can go home and listen to someone.